The second week of Nebraska spring practice is over, and man, there is never a dull day as a Husker fan. Throughout this week, we learned a bunch of new information throughout interviews, press conferences, practice bits, and of course, inside info. So in today's video, I'm going to break down everything that we learned along with some major storylines to watch out for throughout the month of April. So real quick, if you like the content, please hit the like button down below. It's completely free and it helps me out. Along with subscribing to the channel if you don't want to miss out on the best Nebraska football and Nebraska recruiting content on YouTube. We're on the road to 3,000 subscribers here on the Will Stimman Sports page, so please subscribe to support Nebraska athletics. But without further ado, let's jump right into it, talking about Husker spring practice and what a week it has been. Let's look at the big storylines. The Nebraska Spring League has been starting up on social media. Busting with the Boys and Will Compton got on campus to interview Matt Rhule and Dylan Raiola. And most notably, Bill Belichick himself was in Lincoln to speak with his team and coaching staff at the coaching conference that Matt Rhule held. But to be completely honest with you, those storylines I just mentioned are complete distractions. Let's jump into some of the other details that we learned over this week regarding player development and this coaching staff. Starting off with Matt Rhule speaking about the importance of building a real passing offense. Now, last week I spoke to you about the development of Dylan Raiola and Daniel Kalen. The fact that both of these true freshman quarterbacks are ahead of schedule, that Matt Rhule expects both of them to compete for this quarterback one job and play significant playing time in the fall. Now, we learned a completely new perspective about this quarterback development and this offense this week, and this is something I've talked about in the past. Good coaches don't transition their players to fit a certain offense. They transition their offense to fit their players. That is what Matt Rhule is doing. He's transitioning this offense, which last year was primarily led on quarterback running and running the football down a team's throat. He's transitioning to be more of a traditional, spread West Coast offense, to building this around building this around Dylan Raiola and Daniel Kalen. Now, what does this mean? It means gone are the days of running the ball 4, 5, 6, 7 times with your quarterbacks in one game. Gone are the days of your quarterback leading the team in rushing yards. I expect in 2024, it's going to be about 50-50 when it comes to passing and running the football. Heck, it might even be more in the passing's favor, maybe 55-45, just because it's going to fit Dylan Raiola and his development more. That's a good thing. That's what good coaches do. And Matt Rhule is doing what's best for the development of both these young quarterbacks. He's not going to put them in harm's way. So I know a lot of people have had questions about that. Gone are the days of the offense that we ran last year, and that's thanks to Matt Rhule and our new co-offensive coordinator, Glenn Thomas. Speaking about this passing game, a little bit of an inside bit here. I spoke about Jamal Banks and how well he's played. But another wide receiver who's been playing the second best in that group in spring practice and has been getting no love is Jalen Lloyd. That is your guy to watch out for because he's played very well throughout spring practice. And, of course, the third guy, when I was speaking to somebody about who's been playing the best throughout spring practice, have been those two and then Demetrius Bell. Those are your three best receivers so far throughout the first 2 weeks. So one thing I want to mention before we get into the next storyline is Matt Rhule did something in his press conference that really grabbed at me. And he said that we never keep great players on the bench. Now, this is something I have been worried about when it comes to past coaches. We've seen Scott Frost, Mike Riley, Bo Pelini take very talented, true freshman, talented players and sit them on the bench for no real reason. Matt Rhule does not do that. He's shown that last year. He's going to do the exact same thing this year. If you're talented, he's going to find a way to get you on the field. And it all goes back to the fact that the most talented players under Matt Rhule are going to get on the field, no ifs, ands, or buts. Something that is super near and dear to my heart. But the fact of the matter is that if there's a true freshman and he's out playing a senior, he's getting on the field over that senior every day of the week. There's no more bias. There's no more, but this guy's doing the right things in practice. If you're more talented and you're going to put this team in a better position to win, Matt Rhule is going to put you on the field. So I love that he said that in a press conference. So talking about the passing game, let's transition over to the running game. What is this going to mean for some of our running backs? Now, last week I spoke about Gabe Ervin and Ramir Johnson being out for the entirety of spring practice rehabbing from injuries they had last fall. We didn't know that Quentin Ives was also injured. He's going to be out for the rest of spring practice as well. Another scholarship back for us, which means only 2 scholarship running backs are healthy. Dante Dowdle, who we talked about last week, complete tank. He's doing very well for Nebraska so far. But a guy who's not being talked about as much, Emmett Johnson. And he's playing perhaps a lot better than Dante Dowdle. We're talking about a guy in Emmett Johnson who got a lot of quality experience last year as our starting running back throughout the season. He built on a bunch of good muscle throughout spring practice so far. And as athletic as it gets, he's super fast, super speedy, really quick. And man, he's showing that in practice. Nobody's talking about him. People are talking about Dante Dowdle, how excited they are for him, how excited they are for Gabe Irving to get healthy and the rest of them. I would not be surprised if Emmett Johnson is your day one starting running back with how he's being talked about. Matt Rhule, when he's talking about this running back room, Emmett Johnson, the first guy he talks about. Same thing with our running back coach, E.J. Barthel. Same thing with Marcus Satterfield. Emmett Johnson's the real deal. And if there's one guy I'd pencil down as your starting running back on the depth chart, it's Emmett Johnson. So that's a guy you want to watch out for in that running game. But let's go into a major storyline that nobody's talking about. The coaching camp that's went on over the last couple of days. So, of course, Bill Belichick got on campus. We're not really going to talk about that. Like I talked about at the start of the video. I mean, that's a cool thing. It's a nice bit. Doesn't mean much. But what means something is the fact that over 900 people were in attendance for that coaching camp. 900 high school coaches. That's a big deal. And it all goes back to Matt Rhule and what he spoke about when he was initially hired here at Nebraska. It's all about building connections. This is something he brings when he's recruiting these players. When he's recruiting high school guys, he builds these tight-knit connections. He's texting them all the time. He's inviting them to campus for events. And every single time a quality high school recruit is talking about Nebraska, he always says, Matt Rhule makes me feel valued. But it's not just his connection with these high school guys. It's his connection with these coaches. Time and time again, we have seen Nebraska coaches, Big Ten coaches, coaches all over the country fail to build repertoire with high school coaches. And that kills their recruiting. I'm going to bring you an example. Scott Frost did not have any real connection inside Omaha with these high school coaches. And for that reason, he killed in-state recruiting. It was dead. He didn't get a single Omaha guy in his tenure, besides when he was initially hired. Let's take another example. Lovie Smith, past coach at Illinois. And there was a bunch of good recruits who come out of that state. None of them throughout Lovie Smith's tenure went to Illinois. You want to know why? Because when Lovie Smith was fired, high school coaches all around the state said, we never heard from Lovie Smith. So why did I just go on that rant? Because Matt Rhule is what he says he is. He builds connections. And in order to build connections, you need to trust one of the high school coaches you're talking to. He needs to trust you. And a lot of these high school coaches are coaching up 4 stars, 5 stars, 3 stars. Guys that Nebraska will go on to recruit. So the fact that he's already forging these connections, that he's inviting them to come over to Lincoln to watch practice, to watch a couple of keynote speakers, whether that's Bill Belichick or the great Tom Osborne. It's just building up those connections. And man, they're buying into what Rhule's saying. And because of the fact that they're buying into what Rhule's saying, they're going to send their kids here. And that's only going to mean good things for Nebraska recruiting, which is already on the up and up. One thing I'm going to say about these coaches getting on campus. A lot of them over the last couple of days spoke about how impressed they've been with the formatting of Nebraska practice. The fact that nobody is sitting around. Nobody's standing to the side. Nobody is getting water. Everybody is moving. Everybody's a part of practice. And they said they've only seen that 2 other places in the country. Alabama and Georgia. Nebraska, Alabama, Georgia. That's a pretty good group to be in, right? Matt Rhule is all about discipline. He's all about culture. That's what he's doing at Nebraska. And you can see that in his practices, and everybody is getting bought in. So I'm pumped up about that coaching clinic that he did over the last week. And he said last year there were 300 coaches. This year there were 900 coaches. Can you imagine how many there are going to be next year in the amount of connections and networks that Matt Rhule is building here in Nebraska? That's a great thing. So I'm pumped up about that. Real quick, one last thing I want to mention are the press conferences. So not only do we hear from Matt Rhule like we do every week, we heard from our true freshman along with Heinrich Harburg. Let me rephrase. Heinrich Harburg, Norrell, Daniel Kalen. We learned from all of them throughout this week, along with some other players. And a lot of times, I think people put too much value in these press conferences because there's such a thing as coach speak, right? When coaches are on the podium, they hide a lot of stuff. They hype up their guys. But a lot of the stuff they say isn't true or doesn't mean anything. So we kind of have to sift through that information. Same thing with players. Players say a lot of stuff. They're media trained. A lot of the stuff doesn't matter. When you're listening to these interviews, I want you to listen through a different lens. Look for key figures they're mentioning, some specific details that they wouldn't be leaving out on purpose, some players that they are mentioning that you maybe not heard before, right? Those are the things I want you to mention or think about. Not some random detail Matt Rhule's talking about that, oh, the team's looking really good. Because I know a lot of people do that because they say, oh, Matt Rhule said the team's looking good. So did Scott Frost, so did Mike Riley. It's coach speak. It's just a broad statement that every coach says. You want to really dive into detail and listen between the lines in these press conferences to really sift out what's real and what's not. So something I want to mention there with those press conferences and a lot of the key information about this week I already mentioned. So one thing I want to mention before we get out of this video, we have 3 weeks, guys. It's already been 2 weeks of practice. We have 3 weeks till the spring game. It's going by quick, and we're going to have everything covered here on the Wilson Sports Channel. So thank you for watching this video. Again, we're going to have updates all throughout spring practice, talking about some key information and inside info along with everything else. So please make sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not already. Make sure to like and comment down below what you've learned over the last couple weeks, maybe something I didn't mention. And as always, folks, go Big Red, go Matt Rhule, and see you in the next one.